Welcome to the next video in the Suggestion App course. This is a complete course where we'll build a .NET 6 Blazor server application with MongoDB from the ground up. There are 3 things you need to know before we get started. First, this is part of a series, and this isn't the first video in the series. If you're just starting out, you should check out the playlist that's linked in the description to start from the first video in the series. Second, this course is actually a paid course. MongoDB sponsored it so you can put the videos on YouTube for free. Check out the link in the description to sign up for MongoDB Atlas for free to thank them if you haven't already. Third, you can also buy this course on IamTimCorey.com. The link is in the description. Buying this course will get you all the lessons right away, the source code for each lesson, a certificate of completion, offline access, and more. It also helps sponsor more free content. The video will be the same as it is on YouTube, so feel free to watch the free version if you want to. Okay, let's jump into today's video. Note there may be more than one lesson in this video, since some lessons are short. Now let's take on the admin approval page. This page is where the admins will come in, and only the admins, not real users, and they will come in and they will see all the suggestions that have been made recently that have not yet been reviewed. And they can either approve them, which will put them on the main index page, or they can reject them, in which case they will drop off a view, and only the person who created that suggestion will be able to see that suggestion anymore, and they'll see it in their rejection list. So let's create the page itself. And we'll call this admin approval. And we'll get rid of the H3 tag and start with the page directive. The page directive does not need to match the name of the file. It can be different. For example, it already is different for index where we have just a slash, but you can pretty much choose whatever you want here, or even multiple options for page directives. I just tend to try and match them closely to the name of the file, so it's easier to find these pages when I'm going to make a modification. Now, again, this will be a page that you can only get to if you're both authenticated and authorized as an admin. So we haven't done that yet, so we're going to leave that off for now. Let's get it running, and we'll say we need the iSuggestion data. And I know that we will need the iUser data, but I don't believe we need it now. We'll still bring it in. And we need the navigation data. Navigation manager, nav manager. So pretty standard stuff that comes up with about every page we have. Now let's jump down into the list here of our code, and we'll have a private list of suggestion model, and we'll call it submissions. And these are all submissions users have made. And then we're also going to have one that is the suggestion model, and this is the editing model. This is the model we're currently making changes on, because each of these suggestions the admin can edit. So they can edit the title, they can edit the description, or they can approve or reject it. So we'll have a list of submissions. We're going to need to have one that we say, hey, we're working on edits for this one, if we have any. And then we're going to need a few different placeholder strings, private string, current editing title. And so what this is going to be is we're going to want to know what the original title was versus the new title. So if I say, hey, I want to make a change there, we're going to edit this string right here. And then only when we say, yes, that's what I want, we're going to then put that into the model. That way we don't accidentally have changes where we said, never mind, I don't want to do that. So it's kind of like an undo feature. Private string edited title. And this is the other half of that undo feature. We'll have the same thing for current editing description. And we'll see how to set this up in just a minute. So with that, we can have our protected override OnInitializedAsync. And in here, and it ate that last curly brace again. In here, we also need to make an async. We will say submissions equals await suggestion data dot get all suggestions waiting for approval. Now again, this is an admin only thing that we are allowing, which means this page should not be viewable by anybody that is not an admin. So we'll have to lock that down. But that's all we need to do for that method. Next up, we'll create a few more methods. The first one is to approve the submissions. Private async task, approve submission. And we'll pass in the suggestion model since there's multiple suggestions in this list. And we'll say submission approved for release equals true. So if you're going to approve it, we'll set that flag to true, and we'll say submissions dot remove submission. And what this does is it removes this specific submission from our list. Since we've done something to it, we're going to clear it out of the list. Now, that's just the local list. That's not the database. That's just locally. But what that does is it allows us to not have to go back to the database every time we make a change. Instead, we can just work off our local copy, trusting that, in fact, it will have been updated in the database. So finally, await suggestion data dot update suggestion and submission. Make sure it's update suggestion and not upvote suggestion. There's a difference. So we're updating this suggestion right here, and that's what's going to take in this change right here, which this update suggestion is a full replace. So just note that's going to happen, not the end of the world. It's pretty standard thing. The only thing to watch out for is if you're holding on to something that someone else might be changing, and then you make a change and then you submit that change, you might cause an issue. But that shouldn't be a problem on the admin page, since the admin's the only one that have access to this data. But something to think through is, do I need to do a full update, or should I do a specific field update as opposed to a full overwrite? Okay, so that's the approve submission. Now we need the reject submission, which is going to look a lot like this one. So we'll call it reject. But instead of approved for release, we're going to say dot rejected equals true. And we'll still remove it from the list. We'll still update the suggestion. And that takes care of that submission as well. Again, taking it off the list without really need to refresh that list, so the user still sees that something happened based upon their action, even if it's going to take a half a second more to actually do the work in the back end. Okay, so we have EditTitle. Private void EditTitle, suggestion model, and in here we're going to say that the editing model equals the model, the edited title equals model.suggestion, and the current editing title equals model.id. So we're saying, hey, this is the identifier for the model where we're making the edits, and the current editing description equals nothing, because we want to make sure that we're not editing both a title and a description. This is going to, what's going to happen is we're going to have this text box that shows off, or text area that shows off the title, the suggestion. And when you click on it, it's going to allow the admin to make an edit to it. So that's what's going to happen here is we're going to enable editing of that particular model, and we're going to grab that suggestion to say this is what we're editing, and the current editing title we're going to apply to the ID saying, hey, this is what we're modifying, this identifier, and we're not going to be modifying a description. That way we can show and hide different fields. So we'll see it better once we start seeing the HTML, but what it's going to do is it's going to show and hide fields, and then from there we can make the change and approve a change. And if we do, then we'll have the save title. So let's go on to the save title. Let's go on to save title, and we'll come back to the edit suggestion. Or edit detail, description, sorry. So private async task save title, suggestion model. And we're going to say the current editing title equals string.empty, which closes out we're using these to open and close the form, showing either the form, showing either the form or just the text. So by having this match, it will show the form, whereas when it doesn't match anymore, then it will show the just the text. And again, I'll show it to you in just a minute. So model.suggestion equals edited title, and then await suggestion data dot update suggestion with the new model. So again, it's going to do a couple different things. One is going to close out the field we're editing. It's going to take that title and update the model with it. And then it's going to send that model back to the database. But it's also going to update that model, which will update our list. So it's going to, again, give a new value for the items in our list without having to go to the database to get that and verify that's the new value. So let's see this in action before we do the save and edit suggestion, because I'm going to make sure we're clear on what's going on here. So let's go back to the top, and we'll start doing our HTML. We'll come back to the code. So H1, we have pending submissions, and we're going to have a div at the top that is going to have another div that has add submissions, if there are any, .count submissions. And that's just going to tell us, hey, here's how many people there are, or how many suggestions there are in our list. And we'll have another div that inside of it is going to have a button with a onClick equal to ClosePage, which we don't have yet. Let's go ahead and implement that ClosePage just so we have it, which that ClosePage is the same code as create, has the same code as pretty much everywhere. So let's grab that. Let's grab that code. We'll copy it. We'll come down here to the bottom. We'll paste it. That takes care of the ClosePage, which just makes our life a little easier to not have that error. Okay, so we're going to have an if statement now. And we're going to say if submissions is not null. So as long as we have submissions, then we can say for each var s in submissions. So we're going to loop through every submission we have, and we're going to start with an outer div. And then inside of that, we'll have a div for our buttons. And the first one is going to be onClick equals, and again, the double parens, the arrow, approve submission for this submission. and we'll have approve. So this, if you click this button, it's going to approve the submission. So that'll be the top of our specific submission. So if you say, hey, I want to see a video on Redis, then the admin will come in here and just hit the approve button, and that will be an approved suggestion. If, however, you say, hey, here's my homework, do it for me, then we're going to have the reject submission, and we'll say reject. So those buttons go on top. After that, we're going to have, outside of the button div, we're going to have another div. And inside there, we're going to wrap everything in another div. And we'll say if current editing title equals s.id. And this is where I said that we're going to change how things show up based upon if you're currently editing the item or not. So we could match this up on the current model somehow, but the problem is that we don't know if we're editing the title or the description. So we have this string that whenever we click on the field, it's going to change to, hey, we're editing the title of this model. And if we are, then we're going to show an edit form. And this edit forms model equals edited title, which, by the way, is not the greatest to have a model be a value, well, it's not a value type, but a string type. They like to have reference types here, and string is not the ideal choice, but it does work for this small form, so we're going to roll with it. Oops, on submit equals, and we'll open and close our parens and say save title and pass in the S. So when you submit the form, we're going to, and it's not on valid submit, we're not doing any validation. We're just saying, hey, if you submit it, then go ahead and save that title. And remember, that's the save title method is where we then say, we're not doing this anymore. We're not editing this title. We're setting it to string empty, which will hide this because it's no longer going to match. So once we submit, it closes out the form and goes to the else, which we'll get to in just a minute. Okay, input text. Bind value equals edited title. And then we're going to have a button. And the type equals submit. And then inside of here, I am going to put the item, which is a span class equals OI, and then OI-check. And that's probably good enough for now. That's going to be a checkbox that says, hey, or a check icon to say approve, something like that. So we're just going to have small little icons. We'll have another button, very similar. And this one, instead of being submit, it's going to have an on click equals, and it's going to be current editing title equals string.empty. So what's this doing? We're going to change, by the way, the check is going to be an X instead. Well, this is the approve. So if you hit the check mark, then cool. You've said, yes, I'm done making the edits because this is an input form, and it's going to submit, which is going to save the title. If you click this button instead, which is an X, and we'll have these as green and red probably or something like that, even though I know red-green colorblind can be a problem, but no problem because they're also icons that have a check mark or an X. And what this will do, if you hit the X, is it will set the current editing title to be empty, which, if the current editing title is not the ID, it will not show this form. So it's going to basically close the form out. And what are we going to see if we don't have the form open? S.suggestion. And we're going to have after that a span class equals OI-pencil. And this is going to be an icon that's a pencil icon symbolizing edit. And we'll have the @onClick equals EditTitle, like so. And then we'll close out our span. So this is going to be a little pencil icon next to our suggestion where we click on it and we say, if you click on that, then edit the title. So that's going to set the current editing title to be the ID, which is going to close out of this and show this instead, which is the edit form. And if they say, yes, I'm good with the edits I've made, it's going to save a title and close the form. If they say, no, I didn't want to do this, it's just going to close the form. And either way, it's going to come back and show this again. So it's a cool little quick edit form, very easy to use and very hopefully intuitive as to how it works. So that's really all there is to that edit form. We're going to do the same exact thing with our description. So let's go back and write the code for the description. Since I waited to do that until I explained kind of how we were doing the edit and save. So private void, and this is edit suggestion model, and we'll say editing model equals model. Edited description equals model.description. And the current editing title is just an empty string, and the current editing description equals model.id. Oops, and it's not edit suggestion, it's edit description. There we go. So this will allow us to modify the description. And just in case you're wondering if I wasn't clear before, the reason why we have these strings instead of just saying, hey, point to the model, we have which model we're editing. But because we have which model we're editing doesn't tell us if we're editing the title or the description. So by filling in the ID in the edited description and wiping out the other one, we know, oh, it's the description we're making an edit of, or oh, it's the title we're making an edit of. Now, we could make those Boolean, but then we have to check that and then go to the model to get the ID. This is an all-in-one operation. So now let's go down to the save description. Private async task save description. Suggestion model, and the current editing description equals string.empty. And that will again close out that box. Model.description equals edited description. And await suggestion data dot update suggestion for the model. So that's going to make our edits complete on our page. So now you can come back up here and continue on this form. We're going to have something very, very similar to this, but for our description, but it's not quite yet, because first we have to come down here after our if statement, after that div. So after line 43 here, we're going to have another div. Inside here, we're going to have s.category.category name. And so we're just going to show category name. We're not going to allow them to change it. Another div, and in here we'll have s.author.displayName. Again, we're just going to allow the admin to see the display name. We're not going to allow them to change it because you can't change someone else's name. That's just not one of the things we're going to allow. Okay, so now we have our description div. So if current editing description equals s.id, then we're going to have an edit form. And the model for this edit form is going to be edited description. And we're going to have an onSubmit. And in here, what we're going to do is we're going to have the SaveDescription. And pass in not to S. There we go. SaveDescription. So we can unpin this to have more space. So that will give us the edit we need. So we have an input text, bind value equals edited description. And after that, we're going to just close it out. And we'll have two buttons. In fact, we can copy those buttons from up above because they're the same buttons. The only difference is don't forget to change your cancel to current editing description equals string.empty. But otherwise, it's the same buttons. They're either the check mark or the X to signify good or bad, like, do it or don't. Now let's put the else statement in here. And we'll have s.description. Nope. How about s.description? There we go. And span. And we'll have the class equals the OI. IntelliSense does not help me there. OI-OI-pencil. And this is going to have an onClick. Equals edit suggestion, edit description. There we go. And pass in that S. So that will finalize the edit. We'll start the edit of the description, and this will finalize it over here. So it's just the same pattern as above. Let's try it out. So we need to go to /AdminApproval. So we'll start the web page up and test it out. Always test your changes whenever you can, because you don't want to have too many changes before you test out things. Admin approval. 0 pending submissions. Well, we can change that. Let's go over to our rejected. Actually, nope, it's rejected. Let's change this from rejected, false, and approved for release is also false. So that should put it in the correct list. We may need to refresh this because of the caching. So let's load this again and see if we can get a pending approval. There we go. So now we have this admin approval, which has just one, but we have the ability to approve or reject it. We also have these little pencil icons next to both test and this is a test. That's the description. So let's change test. Let's click on the pencil icon. It changes to a little box. And that box allows us to say, I want to know more about Redis. And we hit the approve. There we go. The approve will allow us to edit this back. And now we can say, okay, cool. We want to know more about Redis. That's the title. Now, admins aren't going to make this drastic of a change. This is not about admins asserting their own desires onto your suggestion. But if you mistype something, or if maybe there's a word that we really don't want to go through, maybe you use a swear word. I want to learn more about blankety blank Redis. Maybe we'll just edit out the blankety blank and it'll be I want to learn more about Redis. So that's the kind of thing we'll probably use this for. This is a test of how edit works, like so, and we'll approve that. And now that's your suggestion. We can hit approve. Now if we come back over here and refresh our data, we're going to see that this one says, I want to know more about Redis, and this is a test of how edit works, and it has been approved for release. So cool stuff there. It'll actually work properly. So far, we only have 5 suggestions. This one right here, there's our new edit. This is a test of how edit works. I want to know about Redis. So it has shown up in our list. So that is the admin form for approving or rejecting elements. So you can approve or reject suggestions based upon that form. Again, that'll be only for admins once we get the authentication in place. The final page we're going to do in this section is the not authorized page. And this is actually a page where we won't even go to this directly, meaning we won't go to this by going to a page directive, as in / not authorized. We'll go to this only if we have gone to a page where we're not allowed to go. So let's put this in the shared folder. It's going to component essentially. So new Razor component, and we'll call this not authorized. We will not give it a page directive. We will, though, inject the navigation manager, nav manager. And we do need to have, we'll put the close button in. Let's go ahead and just do that down here. Private void close page. And we'll say nav manager dot navigate to, again, the home. So this is going to allow you to navigate back to the home if you decide that, hey, you're right, I shouldn't be here. So we're going to have a div, and then inside there, another div. Inside there, we're going to have a div, it's a row, if I can spell. And this row will have a column in it, and that column will have a div that says authorization required. And then we'll have a paragraph, and I'll just paste this in, a little message saying, hey, you're not authorized to be here. That's really all that's going to be. And then we're going to have another column here that's going to be our close button. On click equals, oops, we don't even need this. I get so used to passing in parameters, we don't need to. Close page, don't need to in this case. So just close the page. And that's all there is to it. It's just a little page that says, hey, authorization's required, and you're not authorized to be here or to go to where you're trying to go. So you can close this page and go back to the home page, or you could use the login button at the top, which we'll have later. And they can go and log in and then hopefully have the permissions they need to go where they need to go. So that's all this is. Pretty simple page. It is nested a couple levels in just because of the fact we want to make this look pretty and lay out nice and have a, pop off the page kind of feel to it. So that's why we have it so many layers in. And that's the last page we need. We can't really test this page just because we don't have a way to call this component. We could put it on, for example, the index page, try it out, and then take it off again. We could. I'm not going to. There's not much to this yet, not until we actually have some authorization to do or not do. And with that, I think we're ready now to actually start doing authorization and authentication. I think we've talked about it enough. We've talked about how we need to do it, and we will be doing it. So next up, what we're going to do is set up Azure Active Directory B2C and integrate it into this application.